The regular meeting for Thursday, October 6, 2022 will now come to order. We'll have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. Hayes.
Dear Lord, we thank you as always for the opportunity to get together and to fellowship with one another. We ask, Lord, that you temper all our remarks, and we ask that you guide this meeting and just shower us with your wisdom and protection as we go away from tonight, through the week, through our lives, really. Thank you, Lord, for your son, Jesus, and thank you, Lord, for the sparing Southwest Louisiana from the hurricane that hit Florida. And we pray for those people down there. We know what they're going through. We've been there and done that, and with your help, we survived. And we ask that you help those folks as well. In your precious son, Jesus' name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Face the flag. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Andrew Carter?
Here.
Mr. Barrett?
Here.
Vice President Barchi?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Byrd?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hayes?
Here.
Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. Lewis? Mr. Markentile?
Here.
Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Tremonte?
Here.
And President Stella.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Because of a 5:45 public hearing, we're going to go to item 3, which is an appearance by the Honorable Mike Francis, Louisiana Public Service Commissioner, District 4. Mr. Francis.
Thank you for having me. When I look at that agenda, I said, I want to let y'all know that one of the things I hate about politicians is long-winded bunch of bull. Okay? So I'm going to be brief. I thank you for having me and appreciate the service y'all do. I brought two of my special ladies here with me today that I have to recognize. My wife, Sheila. Sheila, stand up, please. And Sheila's a graduate of LaGrange High School. Hey. I feel like I'm at home here with her and with you all. And also, another one is Janice Perkins. Janice, stand up and stay standing, please. Janice used to work here at the police jury, and she's been with the commission for over 20 years, served for 5 different commissioners. Wow. And I get her ear quite often every time I get chewed out about something, okay, to help me. Thank you, Janice. She's the head of my staff. Thank you, Janice, for coming. I'll be real brief. I'm here to beg for your vote. I'm running for election this year. You elected me 6 years ago to serve, and I kind of, Donald Trump was at the head of the ticket, and I was at the bottom. And I sure wish his policies were in place right now. So I'm going to be fighting for that. I'm a businessman, and I've been in this area most of my adult life. I've had a great successful career in the oil and gas industry, and a lot of people don't know this, but for the council, I had the largest business at the Port of Lake Charles at one time, and if you don't believe that, I'll call Bill Race and ask him. It was a wonderful thing. It was probably one of the greatest accomplishments that I had in 30 years, and I'm still trying to apply those same business principles to my job at the Public Service Commission. And with these high electricity rates, it's been tough. And I apologize for that. I can tell you I'm doing everything I can to hold those rates down. And some of the lawsuits I have against Entergy prove that I'm not their partner. I'm working for all of us. And I would just respectfully and humbly ask for your vote November the 8th. Thank you.
Hold up, Mr. Francis. Mr. Underpump.
Commissioner Francis, thank you for coming this evening. But I want to thank you. We work with you. The job that you do on the Public Service Commission is very admirable. You're always approachable, and you do take a business. You're not just saying this to ask for people's votes. It's what you practice, and I just want to let you know we appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank y'all for having me, and I know you got a busy agenda, so I'll get out of the way.
One more, Mr. Francis.
All right.
Mr. Barris.
Thank you. Mr. Francis, excuse me, in a past life, I was in the television business, and I produced a show for a gentleman by the name of Ron Castile.
Oh,
it was
man.
a fishing show, and he had his commercial breaks, and he had you had some sort of affiliation with it, but there was a commercial with you fishing, and you had your ball cap on, and you were out on a fishing boat. I don't know if you were maybe with a grandson, possibly, or
That's right. Well, the spinnerbait?
Yes.
Yes. that's
And I
right.
remember that, and your message, you know, you could tell that, you know, you're a lot like you are now, and you've not changed anything from that, and appreciate you coming and visiting with us.
I wish I had 30 minutes to talk about that. Y'all are so busy, I know the job you do. And one thing I might say about police jury, over the last couple of years, I have come to respect the work y'all do and what you do for public service. And, you know, your constituents, they know where you live, and they come to your house, man. You know? But thank God they don't. I don't know if I could do your job, but I want to work with you. I'm going to be here for the next 6 years, God willing. And I'm your friend. I want to help you, okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to go to 4A. Adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the professional engineering contract for the Gum Cove Road Bridge Replacement Project.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Onderpont. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 4A passes. 4B, adopt a resolution approving a professional engineering contract for the intersection improvements at John Stein Road with Sampson Street, Westwood Road, Louisiana 378 project. I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 4B passes. 4C.
Move on 4C.
Adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the contract for the Coach Williams Drive Extension Project. I have a motion by Mr. Markentile and a second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any
Please
objection?
finish it.
I'm sorry?
I said, please finish it.
Oh,
That one's never gonna be finished. It's been going on for years. It'll go to Shreveport by the time they finish with it.
I'm gonna leave it alone.
Is everyone done?
Yes, sir, I'm
Item
sorry.
4C passes, that's fine. Item 4D.
Move on 4D.
Adopt a resolution approving an amendment to the professional engineering contract for the Clearfield Ranch subdivision water line installation project. I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Abshire. Is there any discussion? I'm sorry? Is there any discussion, any objection? Seeing none, 4D passes. And I want to say yea to that one, by the way, so there's my opportunity. 4E, adopt a resolution approving a utility and drainage servitude agreement for the Highway 397 and James Sudduth Road Water Line Loop and Replacement Project. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 4E passes. 4F, adopt a resolution approving a utility and drainage servitude agreement for the Highway 390, did I just do that one?
No, it's two of them.
For the Highway 397 and James Sudduth Road Waterline Loop and Replacement Project. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 4F passes. 4G,
Move on 4G.
adopt an ordinance authorizing the purchase of property located at 695 Topsy Road, Lake Charles, Louisiana, through funding received from the FEMA Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, FMA, to mitigate future flood losses of this repetitive loss structure. I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Mr. Markentile.
What do we, now, once this is finalized, what do we do with that property?
Well, under the guidelines of the program, the police jury will keep the property, and really, it can't really be reused or redeveloped. So we'll keep it maintained one way or another, and it'll remain green space.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, 4G passes. 4H, adopt a resolution approving the submittal of a grant application for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP, for Louisiana severe
on
storms,
4H.
tornadoes, and
Second.
flooding. Have a motion by Mr. Tremonti and a second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. 4H passes.
Move on 4I.
4I, adopt a resolution approving the submittal
Second.
of a grant application for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP, for Louisiana severe winter storms. Have a motion by Mr. Onderpont and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. 4I passes. 5A, approve applications for liquor and beer permits. Staff recommends 18 renewal applications be approved. I did not have one. Is there any discussion? I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion besides my mess up? Hearing none, 5A passes. 5B, receive report from staff regarding proposed amendments, Article 2, grass and weeds. Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a short presentation before you tonight. This is a amendment to Chapter 11 of the Code of Ordinance for garbage, trash, and weeds. And basically, what we're amending this ordinance to do is to include some commercial properties. Right now, the ordinance only applies to residential properties. And so we're looking for this ordinance to include the commercial properties in our current overlay districts. And that could be expanded later on depending on how this sort of goes. But Kim Vadrine here in my office, she's been working on this ordinance for us. And we brought this before the Planning and Zoning Liaison Group back in early part of September, and they approved us to move forward with this. And then so tonight we're just introducing this to you. We're not asking for you to take any final action. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kim for just a brief presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Vidrine. I am the planning manager in the Planning and Development Department, and I work under Wes. Like he said, I'm going to keep this brief. I'm going to talk about the proposed amendment to Chapter 11, garbage, trash, and weeds. Okay, so what exactly is changing in this chapter? We are now going to be including commercial and industrial properties to the grass cutting and removal requirements in existing overlay districts. If this amendment is adopted, our staff intends to monitor the enforcement and success of this ordinance to determine potential expansion to other areas in the parish. This is the new section, Section 1139, that will be added into the current ordinance. To summarize this, developed and undeveloped properties zoned commercial or industrial must cut grass and weeds a minimum of 50 feet around the entire perimeter of the property measured from the property lines. We also stated in there that it shall be unlawful for the accumulation of trash, debris, refuse, or discarded or noxious matter upon the entire area of the property. At this time, this only applies in the Nelson, Lake, and Ward 1 corridor overlay districts. As mentioned before, we intend to monitor the enforcement of this amendment to determine potential expansion to other areas in the parish and to any additional overlay districts if and when they are created. For the visual folks out there, this is a diagram that will be included in the ordinance that illustrates the proposed Section 1139 I just summarized. You can see the bold property line, and you can see the 50-foot minimum cutting and removal requirement along the sides of the property. All right, this is the estimated timeline for the adoption of this amendment. Today, October 6th, I introduced the amendment. From here, a public comment period will begin, and the ordinance with the amendment will be posted to the CPPJ website and social media outlets. At the next police jury meeting on October 20th, that is when the police jury can take final action. If the police jury chooses to adopt the amendment at that meeting, it will be effective immediately. Thank you all for your time, and if there's any questions, I or Wes will be more than happy to answer anything.
Mr. Barris.
So this is only in the overlay district, so like Highway 20 or 1256 south of the interstate, this is not applicable to that because it's not considered an overlay district?
Not at this time. If some of those areas are zoned residential or even agricultural, it could apply to those right now. But in those commercial areas, no, it would not.
So we're going to change an amendment for future. I don't know why. We'll visit on that. I yield back.
Mr. Markentile.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't look at getting too deep into agriculture land on this ordinance, even in the future, because if you got a 50-foot, I'll give you an example. I live on a very busy parish road. My hay fields border the ditch on that parish road.
Yeah, yes, it doesn't include agricultural. Right now. It excludes, there's some exclusions in the ordinance right now that excludes any kind of agricultural property.
Okay.
However, if it's zoned A1 and it's used for residential purposes, there may be a requirement for that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any other discussion?
Move
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
receive report. Do we need a
I have a
motion?
motion by Mr. Frame.
Second.
We don't need a, we don't need a motion.
It's not really necessary at this
Okay,
point.
whatever.
God, you've been here that long, you didn't
I
do it?
mean, yeah, got a report.
Thank you.
All right, where are we going?
Time to go back to the beginning.
Hearing with the title.
Okay, we're going to hold a public meeting as advertised in accordance with law and serve as the board of review to hear a protest on current tax assessments and take appropriate action thereon. Mr. Gabb.
Thank you, Mr. President. Each year about this time, the police jury sits as a board of review for tax assessment appeals. You review appeals by property owners challenging the assessed values of their properties. By law, you listen to the assessor on these matters, and the assessor gives you the guidance that you need to make decisions. And of course, Wendy Aguilar is our assessor, and she will present the appeals to you. As a board review, you only look at the assessed values. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Aguilar when she's ready.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, jurors. It's really not as bad as it looks, I promise. So in the packet I've provided you, you will see a spreadsheet and then some individual sheets as well. I'm going to make it as quick as possible. So as Mr. Gabb reminded you, this is part of your duty as Board of Review to hear any appeals of assessment valuations that we may have in our office for this current year. Remember, as part of your decision-making, that you are looking at valuation only and not necessarily tax dollars, because we're looking at valuation. That's what the assessor's office does, is value the property. In Calcasieu Parish, we have approximately 114,000 parcels. We're going to look at 6 companies and 11 parcels, so very, very, very small percentage. Our first parcel is going to be Calcasieu Refining. Is there anyone from Calcasieu Refining here? Okay, not seeing anyone from Calcasieu Refining. I will quickly tell you that their tax rep was not familiar with some of the contracts that had ended from the previous year, and the items that were going on to the tax roll off of the ITEP exemption. Additionally, he was not aware that their inventory had doubled, and so he filed this appeal based on a little bit of lack of knowledge of what had actually happened with the facility. There were $30 million told to our representative in the field that was done from hurricane recovery. However, the rendition only reflected about $2 million of that hurricane recovery. At this point, we have offered some additional obsolescence for continuation of hurricane recovery. But I would ask that you uphold our valuation and let this move on. I'll take
I
any
need a
questions.
motion to uphold that valuation.
Correct.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Hayes. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. It's upheld.
The next item on our appeal list is Crawford Electric. Is there anyone from Crawford Electric here?
Do we have anyone in the audience to speak on this item?
Okay, this one is very simple. I will tell you that the tax rep that reached out to me did not have authorization to allow me to speak to her on this property, and therefore I just ask that you uphold our valuation.
Move to uphold.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Underpont and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that valuation is upheld.
The next one as we move on is for Interfin. You've heard this name before. This is a property that is a multi-parish pipeline. In Calcasieu, it was appealed, I believe, in 2019. The Louisiana Tax Commission upheld, you heard that appeal, and the Louisiana Tax Commission upheld our valuations. However, there is an outstanding lawsuit that is a multi-parish lawsuit that is still working its way through the system. And therefore, this particular company appeals in each parish every year. Based on that lawsuit, I would ask that you uphold my valuation.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that valuation is upheld.
And I
Is
need
there
it-
anyone in the audience? We're sorry. Is
I
there
was about
anyone
to
in the
say, I
audience?
didn't ask, but I don't think they're here. The next one on our, and that is actually the multiple parcels. It's 6 parcels, but just one company. So that should go for all of those parcels. The next one is Kroger in Sulphur. I don't see anyone here for
Anyone
Kroger.
in the audience on the Kroger property in Sulphur?
Okay, so the tax rep who sent in this information was using the wrong year, the effective age of this property. She was showing it as a much older building than it actually is. We currently have it assessed basically below what the market cost analysis would render. I ask you to uphold my valuation.
We have a question by Mr. Barris.
Sorry?
Real quick.
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
look, if you get in touch with those people, tell them that their parking lot is ridiculous. And people complain about it.
At Kroger?
The trash.
Oh.
Nobody can find them. Anyway, I know, just, I'm trying anything. I'll make a motion to uphold as well.
Okay, I have more discussion, Mr. Tremonti.
He's second.
Oh,
Just I'll second it.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion, any objection? That valuation is upheld.
The next one on our list is Phillips 66. And we do have someone in the audience.
Can you come up, sir, and state your name, address, and position for us, please?
Hey, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I did speak to Mr. Cisneros as he approaches. I think he needs about 5 minutes or so, but I'll keep the time over you.
Okay. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Chris Cisneros. I work for Phillips 66 Company in Houston, Texas. I'm the property tax director for the department there in Houston. Today, I'm up here before you to respectfully disagree with the assessor's valuation she has on parcel 0019130. That is the parcel that represents our refinery here in Lake Charles. Currently, the assessor has a value of about $1,078,939,000. I believe the value is substantially lower, and the fair market value should be no higher than $470,879,000. Rather than go into a lot of detail about this, both the assessor and I have used the Louisiana Tax Commission's Chapter 25 to arrive at our valuations. That is, we take the cost, we determine the appropriate service life and composite factors to use, and we multiply those to arrive at a number. I think where we disagree, both us and the assessor's office, is on the application of functional obsolescence, economic obsolescence, otherwise known as external obsolescence. The refining business is over the long term been challenged. I know right now with prices like they are and gas prices going up recently, you may question why that is, but over the long term, it's a challenged industry. Refineries cost a lot of money to make or to build. That's why you haven't seen one built here in Louisiana or actually in the United States for nearly 40 years now. In addition, there's a high cost to both operate them and a high number of folks you have to run them. It's a very high dollar business, and it involves substantial risk. And over the last 20 years, we've seen a substantial amount of downtime. In other words, time when the refining business hasn't been that good. And it's hard to get people to want to get excited about investing in refineries or spending money in refineries to buy them. So really what I think the appropriate thing to do, and where I respectfully disagree with the assessor's office, is to analyze what type of sales have occurred with the refining business, both locally, within the Calcasieu area, within the state, and then within the country itself, and look at the value and see, as a rule of thumb, has the assessor's value, is it close, or is it higher substantially than what we've seen as far as refinery sales in the country or locally. Here in Louisiana, I've included in my packet a number of about 4 sales. And the most recent one I could find that's remotely comparable was probably in the 2015, 2016 timeframe. So there's some more recent ones. One is in Texas that was a couple of years ago in Houston area. Also one in California that was a couple of years ago. And then recently in 2021, one that was in Washington State. It was called the Puget Sound Refinery. And in my analysis, I determined that probably the Puget Sound Refinery was most reflective of the value of the refineries currently. Now, that's not to say that this is an identical copy of the Lake Charles Refinery. It's both smaller. It's about half as big, but it is the same complexity. And when I speak of complexity, it's a shorthand for Nelson complexity factor, and that is a measure of how sophisticated or how much a refinery has the processing capability to deal with higher crudes with higher sulfur, higher contaminants in them, and can make a more sophisticated type of product. So in a lot of ways, the Puget Sound Refinery was very similar to the Lake Charles Refinery. It has an identical complexity factor, but it is small. But I think that is most indicative of the sales that I could find and for which there's publicly available data. That was probably the best one to choose because it's just one adjustment you have to make for size. So I believe that is the best indicator of value. And after adjusting for our ITEPs, which we have, which is we determine the market value, then deduct our industrial tax exemptions, I believe the appropriate fair market value, in this case the taxable fair market value, should be no more than $470,879,000. I'm conscious of not using any more of your time, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have at this point.
Mr. Abshire.
Yes, sir.
Question for Ms. Aguilar. So this is quite a discrepancy.
It is.
And to get this information at 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening, I can't consciously make a decision about this tonight. What is the requirement by the police jury? What is our timeline to make a decision? And
Sam?
yeah, Bill?
Either one of us, your timeline is tonight. Unfortunately, the rules are set up in a manner that is not really conducive to you guys having the tools to make these decisions. It really isn't.
Well, this information should have been given to us a long time ago.
Well, I'll let Wendy comment on that. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The deadline for these appeals was, I believe, a couple weeks ago, but Wendy can comment more. I'm sorry, Ms. Aguilar can comment more on that.
Okay, you can go on with it, it's fine. I want to make sure that Mr. Cisneros is finished with his presentation before I start mine, if you don't mind, and then I will address any of your questions.
Okay, perfect.
I don't have any more comment unless the jury, the police jury has any questions for me.
I have a question for Mr.
I will, but I'll listen to Ms. Aguilar first.
Chris? You have a question for who, Chris?
I just got a comment. I've been complaining about this for years. Because here's the deal. It doesn't matter what you say here tonight because you don't have the authority to make this decision, nor are we qualified to make this decision. I can't, like you just said, I can't deny anything he's got in here. He certainly sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
You're right.
And I'm not saying she doesn't because she knows her job as well. This is a complete waste of all of our time tonight because no matter what you say, the state's going to make the decision. This should not even come before a police jury nowhere in this state ever. But it does. That's just the way it's set up. Am I wrong? I mean, really,
You're not, and you and I have had this conversation right here every year. But the saving grace is the tax commission. The tax commission has the final say. The law is written in a way that the assessor is really it gives you guidance on these decisions. So you really have to defer, unfortunately, to the assessor here. In Phillips 66 situation, and Ms. Aguilar, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were here a couple years ago, and you did uphold Ms. Aguilar's assessment at that time.
901 building.
Correct.
And I don't know what happened after it left here 2 years ago, but that's what you did 2 years ago. I don't see how you'd go against what you did 2 years ago. And so you probably would just affirm here,
$500
uphold.
million.
and it isn't going to matter. That's the crazy thing about all of this. Usually things come before us, we make a decision, and it may, that's the way it's going to be. And in this case, it's just a complete waste of time. We need to get, the state needs to redo how this whole thing works. This man drove from Houston. Really, hey, because he has to, it's his job, I get all that, but really, they're both here for no reason. What we're going to do doesn't have any effect on it. Cut that whole part out, let it just go to the state and they'll make the decision. We need to reach out to our state representatives and they need to change the way this thing works. I mean, they do. I asked the staff to please do that. Next year, we're going to be here doing the same thing. That's all I got, I'm
Mr.
done.
Underpont?
Yeah, I recall Mr. Landry giving the same talk at the 901 building as we did in Mr. Cisneros. In fact, y'all had a sidebar conversation afterwards, but just to clarify one, you're telling us that you feel the evaluation of your property and refinery is $470 million and not $1 billion? Do I hear you correctly?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Everyone finished with the gentleman?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Ms. Aguilar.
Okay, so notwithstanding Mr. Landry's remarks, I do understand his frustration, believe me. So we do have a difference in valuation on this. I think Mr. Cisneros explained it fully. With personal property, the property is reported annually, every year, by the business owners. Unlike real estate, land and buildings, where we reassess every 4 years, personal property, business assets, are reassessed annually. We send out a form every year to the property owner. They report their information back to us. So they report their assets. You have a business, I know you get your little green and white form every year, you hate it, everybody hates it. But that's where we get the information from, is from the property owner. The assets come to us, we establish the value on our tax roll, and then it's taxed based on the values that you come up with your taxing districts. So the valuation that we have on the tax roll is the valuation of the assets. It's that simple. It's changed every year based on whether there were improvements or disposals, so forth. So the valuation on the tax roll is the valuation of the assets. Again, where Mr. Cisneros said, our disagreement is on obsolescence. We have provided them obsolescence. You'll see in your packet that in 2019, that was a year that I think we ended up here the first time, if I remember correctly. They kind of run together after a while. 2019, we granted a 30% obsolescence factor. In 2020, we granted a 35% because of the pandemic and the hurricanes. In 2021, again, we granted 35%. And this year, we've offered 25%. So we do work with our property owners, including big ones, to do everything we can to help them. Okay? I would ask that you uphold my valuation.
Moved to uphold. Second. I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? That valuation is upheld.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The next one is Sasol. And this one is very simple. The tax rep for Sasol did not receive their information from the company in a timely manner, and therefore has not had a chance to review it completely. So she has filed an appeal just to protect their right to appeal. She has not provided me information on why what she wants to change it to and so forth, and obsolescence at this point. So we're just waiting on that information, and we'll work with them when we get it, but at this point we don't have it. I would ask you to uphold my valuation.
So moved. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that valuation is upheld. Mr. Gabb.
Oh,
Do you have anything?
I was going to just conclude with Ms. Aguilar. I feel your frustration. Unfortunately, state law has set up this process. It has set up this process as an intermediate appeal. And I think it does serve a purpose, not necessarily for us, but maybe for Ms. Aguilar to get the appeals, and that she can immediately work with them. And I think she does assess them very quickly and try to work through these things. So it is that first level. I know the tax commission is where these things belong, and it will get there eventually. But that's the process of it set up.
If I may, look, I get you. She's been working with them, though. She doesn't have to come down here to work with them. She's already doing that. I can assure you. You can call her anytime, or people in her office, and they work with everybody. This isn't the one, but they don't agree with one another. That's the thing. That's what got it to this point. They don't agree. I mean, we're not the one that's going to settle it. The state is going to settle it.
And you're correct, Mr. Landry. That's why I said we have 114,000 parcels in Calcasieu Parish. We're here with 6 companies.
Oh, you work them out.
I
You-
do.
most of
I
them.
do my best to work with all of the property owners in this parish. I know we're still all recovering from hurricanes, and I want to help them as much as I can within the law.
I don't think so.
I think that's it. I think we've
appreciate it.
concluded.
We're done.
If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Mr. Abshire.
Any other questions
If you
for
would
Ms.
like to come and
Aguilar?
talk to me, I would
love to.
Okay. Okay. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions I can.
Okay.
Okay.
And Mr. President, we did this last year on October 7, 2021, and so I guess next year we'll do it we'll have the same conversation October 8th of 2023.
Well, maybe we get it
Unless
changed.
we can
Maybe
get
this
this.
is the last one. We have to be hopeful.
Maybe so.
Thank you
We'll be
all for
hopeful.
your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Either way, you ain't got but one more.
You are correct.
We're going to go to item 2. We're going to hold a public hearing at 5:45, ordering said owners to show cause as to why the structures on the said property should not be condemned. 2A, 1416 Beachmont Drive, Moss Bluff, Ward 1, 1 manufactured home and 2 accessory buildings. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 2A? Seeing none, I need a motion to condemn
Move
at
to
30 days.
condemn.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Richard. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that property is to be destroyed. Item 2B, 561 West Telephone Road, Moss Bluff, Ward 1, manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2B? Hearing none, I need a motion to condemn and remove in 30 days. I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that property is condemned. I shouldn't have said destroyed a while ago. I'm sorry about that. 2C, 314 Goodman Road, East Lake Charles, Ward 3, one house. Is there anyone in the audience on 2C? Seeing none, I need a motion to condemn in 30 days. I have a motion to condemn by Mr. Markentile and a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Markentile. Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. This house was on Goodman Road. Like I said, the neighbors complained a lot about it, but I really think, if the lady who stayed there one time would have got like some assistance from Road Home or Restore, it probably could have saved it. But that's like the actual government being kind of slow on getting things done. So that was my little spiel on that, because I think, this house could have been saved, but, she's a former educator, and really she's my 7th grade middle school teacher. So,
Why did you go help?
well, I tried to help her, but, but honestly, I think, if the state would have kind of got the program going a little faster, probably could have saved it, but, things do happen like that. Thank you.
Item 2D, 325 Carpenter Lane, East Lake Charles, Ward 3, one house. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2D? State your name and address, sir, for the record.
Darrell Lewis, 102 Beatrice Drive, Lafayette. I had a couple of persons interested in buying the property. And we hadn't come to agreement on the price. They wanted me to give it to them, and we hadn't really come to agreement. So what I'm asking, for 30 days, so I get back with these people, see they still want it, they don't want it, we destroy it.
I have a discussion about it. I know, thank you. He and I spoke about it, but, this has been going on, before the hurricane.
Yes.
And, everybody been complaining about this in the neighborhood. I've been getting many calls from the neighbors, and then even the neighbors told me that they themselves actually about purchasing the property a long time ago. And I just don't see anything changing in 30 days, because, I really can't evaluate the house because I can't see the house for the grass. So man, the actual grass is, out of hand. So we really can't see the house up on the picture. Because I went by there today and looked at it. And matter of fact, KPLC was out there today looking at it. So it's probably gonna be on the news. I'm just saying that, but I don't really see how this is gonna change, because I know the people in the whole neighborhood been complaining, and they want it gone, and I want it gone too, because that's for the whole neighborhood. I know you and I spoke about it, but even if you do sell it, or try to sell it, you got to tell the people that you're selling to what's going on. Now, I don't know the rules on how that happens, because I know you got 30 days to actually do it. So, where's the rules on that? I know it's 30 days to tear it down, but if you do sell it within the 30 days, then what?
Well, whoever buys it, be on their hand then.
Mr. Smith is correct. Our opinion or recommendation is still to condemn it. Regardless of whether he's going to sell it or not, the structure it's a condemnable structure. It cannot be repaired. And so he can, however he works out his sale between the people, it still needs to be removed.
Yeah. Right.
And, he'll still have 30 days to get it done. And if the property exchanges hands within the 30 days, then we'll try to work with the new owner to try to get that done. But we're still recommending that it be condemned and removed.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. I recommend the same thing. So hopefully, the new owners know that the property needs to be torn down before you try to sell it to them.
Fine with me.
I need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith. You want to speak?
No,
Oh, you
second.
second. I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Markentile to condemn and remove in 30 days.
All right, thank you.
Within.
Any discussion?
Within 30 days. Mine says 30 days.
Mr. President, any
Sir?
discussion?
Yeah, is there any more discussion about that?
No, no, sir.
Okay, hearing none, it's going to be condemned. 2E, 738 Bennett Road, South Lake Charles, Ward 3, one manufactured home.
Move on 2E.
Second.
Is there any discussion, anyone in the audience to discuss anything on 2E? I have a motion to condemn and remove in 30 days by Mr. Hayes and a second by Mr. Markentile. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, it is to be condemned. 2F, 2301 Tuna Lane, South Lake Charles, Ward 3, one manufactured home.
Move on
Is there
2F.
anyone in the audience to discuss 2F? Seeing none, the motion to condemn by Mr. Hayes and a second by Mr. Markentile. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2F is condemned. 2G.
Trash cans.
5838 Benny Lane, South Lake Charles, Ward 3, one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2G? Hearing none, I need a motion to
Move
condemn
on
and
2G.
remove in 30
Second.
days. I have a motion by Mr. Hayes and a second by Mr. Richard. Mr. Barris.
Does that include the recreational vehicle that was right there? I mean, what, back up. Back up. Right there.
Benny Lane.
The ordinance, it'll have to go, there's no
That there's
structure
an
there.
RV, Clark.
We may be
Mr.
working
Crane.
that under a separate case.
Oh, okay.
We're done with it.
I yield back.
2H, you through, Mr. Barris? 2H, 2951 Flora Road,
Mr. President.
South Lake Charles, Ward
Mr.
3,
President.
one house
Mr. President,
and
I'm
one
sorry.
accessory building.
Mr. President, I don't think we took action on 2G.
Yeah, we did.
Move to condemn.
Moved on.
No,
I'll
you
move it
didn't.
again.
Did you see the vote? No, there was no discussion.
Okay, any discussion, any objection? Hearing none, 2G is condemned.
Sorry, Mr. President.
2H, 2951 Flora Road, South Lake Charles, Ward 3, one house and one accessory building. Anyone to speak? Okay, please
Hi.
give your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, Candace Skinner with Candace Skinner Real Estate. Office address is 3005 Common Street. That needs to be redone too. On Flora Road, we have the buyer here who's ready to purchase, and actually we're set to close tomorrow. The buyer's an investor who's flipped several homes and done a phenomenal job with it. We've actually had several offers on the house for higher than we're currently under contract at, but the owner didn't want to accept it at the time. So there's a lot of interest. A lot of contractors believe that they can redo the property. Unfortunately, the lady, she was left the house. She does not have any money, didn't have insurance, just a really bad situation. So we'd like to keep the property available for purchase and closing tomorrow.
Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. All right, Mr. Gab, or Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir.
Did the attorney representing the property owner, I think, called you? And is
Well, didn't call.
there
He
a
called
sale
her.
in progress, or tell us
Yeah.
what you were told?
Mr. Robinson received a call today from the attorney that's working this particular, yes, the closing attorney, and mentioned that there was a closing set for tomorrow. I think they need to be aware that this is in a special flood hazard area, and that this structure, under our substantial damage assessment, it appears to be that it may be more than 50% of the value. And I'm not sure if the structure is not non-conforming in terms of elevation. We don't have that record. This thing was built many, many years ago before floodplain regulations came out. And so what that means is that if it's in a special flood hazard area, FEMA has indicated that it's on our substantial damage list and it's more than 50%, this structure may have to be elevated to meet that elevation requirement. I'm not sure if the buyer knows this, but I'm just making y'all aware of this. So we may need to, if you want to defer it, that's fine, we can look into it, or the buyer needs to be aware of that.
Question, if I may, is that okay? As far as the other structures on the same street that are probably just about the same elevation, what's the status of those?
Well, if they were not substantially damaged and they don't meet the threshold of 50%, they can remain like that.
Okay.
This structure, though, I don't think it's going to meet that threshold. I mean, it's going to be beyond the 50% threshold because there was already an assessment done on it because of the damages. So we just need to.
Okay, and the
I don't want the buyer to buy it, and then
I would make a motion
you
that
gotta
we just defer for 30 days so
Yes,
this
sir.
information can exchange hands.
Yes.
And
we need to.
You know, I'm sure in 30 days we're gonna condemn it.
Excuse me, if I may, my name is Keisha Thibodeau, and I'm with Ladder and Bloom here in Lake Charles, and I represent the buyers. He's an investor, and I've represented him many times, and he's here with me tonight. Now, that is something new to light that I did not know, and of course, we're due to close tomorrow, and it is it's in the morning, but we would like some time to be able to, take this into consideration as well. So I do know that would be one flood claim against the home, but if he has to elevate the home, we need to discuss that as well, if that is the case.
Mr. Landry.
Yeah, and I understand that, and you need to take that into account for y'all to make your decision or what have you. That's why we're going to defer for 30 days. If the gentleman or lady, whoever's buying it, does, they have to understand when this thing is to this point, and if they do get the chance that it's not condemned and they buy it, they need to get after it. Because we've gotten complaints. That's the reason it's to this point. They're going to have to get after it and get that thing to where it doesn't look like it does right now. So
Yes, sir, I do
they
understand
need to take that into account as well, or regardless of a new owner, you're going to end up right here again
Right back.
with it being condemned.
Yeah, and they have other issues on the property. They have an excessive amount of bees that he's going to have to get off of the property. We can't even get on the property to do any further examination because the bees are so bad.
Okay, we've
so I'll
got a
make a
motion to
motion to
defer by
defer
Mr.
for 30
Landry.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2H is deferred for 30 days. Thank you. 2I, 3738 Heather Lane, Southwest Lake Charles, Ward 3, one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 2I? Hearing none, I need a motion to condemn and remove in 30 days. I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Burley. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2I is condemned. 2J, 130 Florence Circle, East Lake Charles, Ward 8, one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 2J?
Move to condemn.
I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Marcantel. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2J is condemned. 2K, 6983 Rue Renard Rouge, Le Bleu Settlement, Ward 8, one house
2K.
and one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2K? Hearing none, I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Barty. Is there any other discussion? My screen's going crazy.
It's going crazy there, bro.
2L, east of 7782 Alta Road, Bell City, Ward 2, one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2L? Hearing none, I need a motion to condemn and remove in 30 days. I have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Hayes. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2L is condemned. 2M, 5163 Fry Road, Carlos, Ward 4, one manufactured home. Is there anyone in the audience on 2M?
Mr. Barris wants to speak on that.
Mr. Barris.
I can call the gentleman up, but in the meantime, if I may, he's got a concern, he's going to cut the frame apart and to be moved. He was concerned about a burn ban, which we're not in, because he's gonna cut, have it cut with a blowtorch. If he can do that, I think it'll be gone. You wanna go ahead and,
State
fill
your
him in
name,
on that?
state your name, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Kirk
please.
Alexander, 7278 Howard Road, Carlos, Louisiana. The structure has been taken down to the frame. It's just the frame left. Now, I was wondering if there was any ordinance against what the lady intends to do is cut the frame into 3 pieces and use 2 pieces as a framework on the bottom to build 2 storage sheds.
You have to get a permit. Yeah, and we're gonna have to see the plans, how you're gonna do it, structurally built.
Okay, I got you. In other words, I ought to just cut it up.
And he's got recent pictures as well, taken today, so if y'all can maybe get, or Mr. David, or.
Cut it up and go sell them.
I guess what are my options? I mean, do I need to?
30,
So you-
go through.
Is the structure no longer there? Is that what you're saying?
Just the frame, the floor frame.
So-
Give it out there in 30
So it's
days.
really, there's no structure there anymore. It's not a structure.
Pretty much,
It's-
I mean,
It's really a junk item now, and so.
Actually,
Mr.
Mr.
Gabbard.
President, why don't we move to defer this and they can sort all this out
Well,
later?
I'll move to defer that,
Second.
and
I
I
have a
think y'all
motion.
can work this out.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Burley to defer 2M. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, it is deferred. 2N, 2738 Miller Drive, Carlos, Ward 4, one house. Is there anyone in this audience to discuss 2N? Hearing none, I need a motion
Move.
to remove and condemn in 30 days. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Markentel. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2N is condemned. 2O, 3524 Highway 90 West, West Sulphur, Ward 7, one manufactured home with addition. Is there anyone in the audience to speak on 2O? Seeing none, I need a motion to
Move.
condemn.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Markentel. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2O is condemned. 2P, 686 Bryan Street, North Sulphur, Ward 4, one manufactured home.
Move to condemn.
Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2P?
Ought to move to defer for 6 months just because he left. No, I'm just.
I
I
move
have a
to
motion by
condemn.
Mr. Burley and a second by
He already moved.
Mr. Richard.
That's what happens when you
Is there
leave.
any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2P is condemned. 2Q,
You end up the chairman or something.
628 Loretta Lane, Northeast Sulphur, Ward 6, one manufactured home and 2 accessory buildings. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2Q? Hearing none, I need a motion to condemn.
Move to condemn.
I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Landry to condemn. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2Q is condemned. 2R, 2417 DeRaso Drive, Westlake, Ward 4, one house. Is there anyone in the audience to discuss 2R?
Move to condemn.
I have a
Second.
motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 2R is condemned. Okay. Ma'am? 5C, adopt ordinances associated with the adjudicated property sale conducted on September
So moved.
7th, 2022. I have a motion by Mr. Abshar and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 5C passes. Item 6A, approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated September 1, 2022. I have a motion by Mr. Lewis and a second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 6A passes. 7A, adopt a resolution approving the submittal of a sub-grant application to provide services and programs in accordance with the provisions of the CSBG Act of 1981. I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Tremonti. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 7A passes. 8A, approve payment of all current invoices. Have a motion by Mr. Hayes.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8A passes. 8B, adopt a resolution accepting new construction and miscellaneous roadway improvements of various roads in Calcasieu Parish, wards 1, 2, 3, and 6 as substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Richard. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8B passes. 8C.
Move on 8C.
Adopt a resolution accepting overlaying of various roads in wards 1 and 8 of Calcasieu Parish as substantially complete. Have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Barty. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8C passes. 8D. Adopt a resolution accepting overlaying of various roads in wards 5, 6, and 7 of Calcasieu Parish as substantially complete.
Motion to
I have a motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Markentile. Is there, I'm sorry? Mr. Barris.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bruce or Mr. Wainwright, you know what's coming. Tell these people they want to get paid to go get all their signs.
We discussed this yesterday, we're making.
Especially the power line warnings that had to be put up there that have pretty much all ended up in the ditches.
They are making final passes. Yes,
Right on. Thank you, sir.
Are we done? All in favor? All in favor? Do I have any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8D passes. 8E.
Move on 8E.
Adopt a resolution accepting striping of various roads as substantially complete. Have a motion by Mr. Richard and a second by Mr. Barty. Discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8E passes. 8F, advertise for bids for
I make a
Bud
motion
Bennett
to
Road
approve, and I
extension.
hope and pray I get a second.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Markentile and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. 8F passes. 8G, advertise for bids for pile repair of various bridges.
So moved.
Motion second.
Approved.
I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. 8G passes. 8H, advertise for requests for proposals for emergency debris removal services. I have a motion by Mr. Guillory and a second by Mr. Richard. And I have a question by Mr. Guillory.
Hey, Alan, is this the time when they have to submit their bids or whatever? This is the time for everybody for the monitoring and the debris removal?
Yes, sir. This is our current contracts, or the ability to enter into new contracts. With each storm, you start a new contract, but our ability to do that will expire December 31st, so we're soliciting proposals for the big debris removal packages. So when those go out to the public, they'll have an opportunity to submit those proposals.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8H passes. 8I, advertise for requests for proposals
moved.
for
Second.
emergency debris monitoring services. I have a motion by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 8I passes. 9A, Calcasieu Parish Planning and Zoning Board. I need a motion
Move to appoint Mr. LaSalle Williams.
Second.
I have a motion
Reappoint.
to reappoint Mr. LaSalle Williams Sr. by Mr. Brame and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Mr. Williams is reappointed. I need a motion for reappointment for Mr. Kirk
So moved.
Smith.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Mr. Kirk Smith is reappointed. Southwest Louisiana
Those are
Regional Planning
reappointments
Commission,
outside.
they're asking for defer for 30 days.
Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Hayes and a second by
Second.
Mr. Landry. 9B is deferred for 30 days. 9C, Vinton Harbor and Terminal District.
Move to submit the names of Mr. Steve Jennings and Mr. Brent Clement.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris
Second.
and a second by Mr. Lewis to submit the names of Mr. Steve Jennings and Mr. Brent Clement. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Two gentlemen have been submitted. 9D, Ward 8, Fire
Move to
Protection
reappoint
District
Mr.
Number
Paul
2.
Guillory.
I have a motion by Mr. Abshire and a second by Mr. Barris to reappoint Mr. Guillory. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Mr. Paul Guillory is reappointed. 9E,
Move to reappoint Mr.
Ward
Lester
4,
Goff.
Fire Protection District Number 3. I have a motion to reappoint Mr. Lester Goss by Mr. Burley and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Mr. Goss is reappointed. 9F, West Calcasieu Port Harbor and Terminal District. I need a motion.
Move to appoint Ms. Jennifer Maybu.
I have a motion by Mr. Abshire to appoint Ms. Jennifer Maybu and a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, Ms. Mabu is appointed. Number 10 is a board advised. I need a motion to go into executive
So moved.
session. I have a motion by Mr. Landry.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Brame. We are now in executive session. We're now back in session. I have a couple of points of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Hayes.
I'd like one. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. Some of you may be. The number one cause of death among teenagers is suicide. With that in mind, here at Lake Charles, there is going to be an Out of the Darkness Walk, 2022 it's called, sponsored by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's going to be at the Burton Coliseum on Saturday, October 15th. I'm telling you this just so you'll be aware of it. If you're interested in supporting this group, contact me and let me know. If you want to walk, that's fine. If you want to make a donation and sponsor a walker, that's fine. Again, it all goes toward the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And if you have a passion for that, please let me know. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Mr. Barty.
I just want to say once again, thank this group for the work you guys did on the Louisiana Detention Basin project. They had the groundbreaking this week, and it was well attended, and it's something that really makes us look good. So thank you, guys.
I need a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.